So, my dear students, I continue with some techniques of teaching English poetry. So, English poetry is also literature for EFL or ESL student. Now, you have to be very careful about each and every point so that you can have better understanding of it. Teachers of literature are always on the lookout for effective techniques and approaches to teach the subject. Obviously, sometimes people and among the students, they do not take interest in one element of literature, like some like novel, some like poetry, some like prose, while some like other components of literature. So and the methods, because this the use of right method, there have been many methodologies and many methods, like in English, which have been started actually from GTM, grammar translation method. Then came actually DM, direct method, all right, and then came ALM, idolingual method, and then many methods came, in fact. But all these methods have got actually certain limitations and certain strengths and limitations, right? So one single method is not going to work effectively. So finally, I suggest to PDR, ALM, TPR, and many others which came, but unfortunately, not a single method was enough to comprehensively take the features of all these things there. So then the scholar and the linguist, you see the educationist and the linguist, they came up with something new approach, which is termed is eclectic approach, eclecticism. What is this eclectic approach? Eclectic approach, which, for example, in some languages, mother tongue is used, and some language, the use of mother tongue methods, the use of mother tongue is banished completely from the classroom. While this eclectic approach, that's combinations of all. Its principal premise is that wherever you think your teaching can be effective, so you can take anything from other methods. So the combinations of all methods. So it allows you, to use of mother tongue, and it allows you other techniques of other. So for the teaching becomes effective and more good, you see, for the students, and then you can use this eclectic approach. It's not a method now. And there is another when we used to read something there, a term which was used, that was post method, because from every method, every teacher, every student, he gets a new thing of his own, and that term is actually a post method, and that post method, it works effectively, right? Because every teacher has got his own techniques, so therefore they can use them in the context only there, especially poetry, because it will the poetry which will reach to obviously its learning process objective. Wu Wu is a writer, most probably from China or from Indonesia, that applying particular techniques and approach and teaching and learning literature, such as student-centered activities. All right, I'm going to explain the student-centered activities. Teaching and teaching literature can be an enjoyable, all right, and exciting, all right, uplifting experience, because the reading process provokes student individual thoughts and interpretations. All right, basically this author stated that applying particular techniques and approach in teaching and learning literature, such as student-centered activity. Student-centered activities mean, we can say, student-centric or teacher-centric approaches. Like mostly in a class of literature or in a class of language, everything that should be student-centered, like means that it involves students mostly in different activities, right? And such teaching and learning is such a student-centric teaching and learning can be enjoyable, exciting, and uplifting experience. Because, as I lastly explained in the last lecture, that when you are given a text which is interesting, so it would have lived an uplifting influence on you there, and it would give you that uplifting experience as well. So because a reading process provokes students' individual thoughts and interpretations, so the literature classroom should be a place. Now it's $1 million word. The literature classroom should be a place where dissimilar ideas, all right, where dissimilar ideas conflict, and at times converge with each other. For students will gain maximum profit only when they are active, when they are active and highly involved in the learning process. So obviously the ideas which are brought to the language classroom or even literature classroom, you may not be at ease with them, right? You may not be at ease with them. So therefore you have to sorry my dear student, I just took a pass just in order to cut your video shorter. Well, I was just telling you something, that the stuff of literature bringing into the classroom, they may conflict, and at times even converge with each other. Converge means that when they become similar, right? After differentiations and after differences, with something becomes similar, or it just takes the forms of another, and thus a conversion takes place. All right. So, and this process, this would certainly help the students to a great extent, and they become active and highly involved in learning. My dear students, here relate to the use of technique in teaching poetry. Here, we are talking about only at this moment poetry. Have discussed and proposed a comprehension strategies matter. All right. So he talked about it. Comprehensive strategy matter, and teaching poetry for EFL students, especially undergraduate students and Turkish. She tries to explore and highlight some of the strategies used to challenge, encourage, and support the communicative learning process for 2 large classes of Turkish learning and their 3rd and 4th years of English language and literature department at Atatürk University. Her learning, because this is just only for your. Her learning strategies cover a range of areas, including cognitive reading strategies, rigorous learning standards, learning style and multiple intelligences, meaningful content, and building cultural knowledge in order to assist learners in realizing their full potential. All right. He hoped that these strategies might be adaptable to other contexts and inspire teachers to teach what matters most in their own classroom. All right. While guidelines for literature teaching in Singapore, in Singapore, right? Singapore schools explore some techniques of teaching poetry that involve pre-reading techniques. All right. For example, draw pupils into a text, activate background knowledge, relate the text to personal experience, techniques for sustaining reading, and exploration. For example, divide the work into manageable portions and provide motivations for independent reading, provide a framework and techniques for highlighting and follow-up. For example, explore a particular theme or character, enable pupils to express their own response, enable people to share view. All these you can find it here. All right. I mean, and pre-reading techniques. For example, you have to do all these things actually, is I mentioned in the first part of their of this lecture. So thus you give a kind of great value to your student. All right. So beside the use of appropriate methods and techniques, selecting a poetry based on students' need and level is also important. According to Reeves, different poetry needs different treatments or methods. To decide what good poems are for the student, one should apply the criteria of poetry in general and read it. So, I mean, these different things are actually done with the teaching of poetry, and similar other methodology and techniques are to be used with other genres of literature like novel, like drama, like essays. All right. So, in apply the criteria, so read it with understanding, vocabulary, the feelings of students. These all things you have to keep in mind. The teachers, this is very, very important. The teachers should decide what kind of poetry will be given to their students. All right. The poetry emphasizes on form. Okay. It is classical or romantic content or aspect of language. The teacher must continually study the nature and the nature and the interests of student, their emotional development. I mean, these are the things which has to be looked by the teacher. For example, the student interest, it has to be looked at. But unfortunately, that's a very, this is a very strict question. We cannot sometimes liberate our student. For example, in bigger university where you can have the expert of all fields in all subjects, they can offer you a variety of subjects. But we, though in HEC syllabus, we have actually the liberty within limitations, but sometimes we do not have teachers, but we just give things to teachers who are in fact not even expert of those things, but still they are for, because we are short of labor, we're short of so many other resources. So I mean, the teacher has to ensure the interest of the student according to that, and their emotional development as well. But unfortunately, the emotional development, we do not take care of this in our universities because of certain reasons, because of number, because of students, because of issues, and their maturity and immaturity outlook. We have to look at it on what things students are mature and what other aspect where students show immaturity. All right. And their range of vocabulary and intelligence. All right. For example, if you are teaching a class of juniors and you talk about subjects, which require a great amount of work on the part of students, so it would become very, very hard indeed. So therefore, this should be carefully done, and the teacher can choose and select a particular appropriate and varied poems from anthologies of them to be taught students in particular class. And these things, they have to be kept in mind, and otherwise it would be very, very indeed hard for them. The readers can start to analyze poetry or poem from poetic devices. Okay, poetic devices. Types, what kind of poetry it is. Sound devices, meter and pentameter, and structural devices. What kind of structural devices have been used in all aspect of poetry that can be analyzed. You can start from figure of speech. You can like, for example, you can define a figure of speech like simile. That simile is a resemblance between two different things. Then you can involve the student practically to come up with some of their own example from their own life. So this would obviously create images actually in their mind as well. So all these things, and reading poetry differs from reading a newspaper or a memo or a book, because poetry is something that is highly musical thoughts about it. Some say some say that spontaneous overflow of thoughts. So obviously it has to be clearly reading poetry. Now this is, see here, reading poetry is a process of finding particular information, ideas, experiences, message, values, and themes for pleasure are serious analysis. Okay, and poems also lead the readers feel intensely to experiences deeply and often to extend our understanding of experiences different from the reader experiences or to affirm own ideas and experience. So such teaching of literature has to be done in a class. If all these discussions which I'm giving you, if poetry is taught in this way, so you are actually bringing literature into the linguistic classroom, and you're enabling indirectly the students and into competent readers and competent listener. So in comprehending a text of poetry, the they should do what? They should know how to read comprehensively the poem according to the level of comprehensive process, right? Crowley and Mountain and Roy et al. Stated that reading as a thinking process is 4 dimension. Okay, 4 dimension of reading, such as word recognition. One is that is mostly this is psycholinguistics aspect, word recognitions, skills, word recognition skill. All right, literal. It's not working. I don't know why. So some word literal comprehension skills, interpretation skills, and critical creative thinking skills. Remember that reading, that is actually reading is as a thinking process, has 4 dimensions of reading. Word recognition, you have to recognize word. This skill should be in you. The literal comprehension skill, that what does it literally means and contextually means. And interpretation skill, interpretation means the contextual, or even how do you interpret there. And then critical and creative thinking skill. So you have to just look at these things and to understand. And the word recognition skill of reading poem can be a process of knowing the meaning of words, determining the word choice, diction, classifying denotative and connotative. Okay, I think this is stopped working. And connotative and denotative meaning, you have already read them and semantic class. And the literal comprehension part, obviously students need to understand the phrases, clauses, figurative languages and sentences that are used in poem. So such analysis actually takes place in the poetry teaching there. While interpretation and creative thinking skill, the students reader give interpretations of I'm trying to just to click on it so that it should underline, but unfortunately there's something happened which I don't understand why. So readers give interpretations of the poem, find the theme and tone, relate the poems to matters beyond the poem, and give comments, opinion, or ideas about. So if such things happen in a poetry classroom, which is also related to language, so obviously this would be a very good thing there. So mostly literary analysis generally covers novel analysis, poetry analysis, and drama analysis. And poetry analysis, that is basically an activity to find particular issues, matters, theme in poetry. Analyzing poetry can be an enjoyable and provocative mental exercise. Provocative means which gives you some trouble, but still it would be very good. In analyzing poetry, the reader may be concerned with particular method and techniques of poem apart in order to understand in its constructions and its meaning. All right. So I'll be inshallah going to the next this how to analyze poetry. Till that you have to stay tuned, and thank you very much. So let's see you there.